Horror movie soundtracks can make or break a film, I believe, as I believe they are an extra character of the film. Hello, guys, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going through something a little bit different. We're talking about soundtracks, horror movie soundtracks, and I'm going to give you today my top 5 favourite horror movie soundtracks of all time. So something just a little bit different than rather just talking about the film. We're talking about a character from the film. A sort of a character that a lot of times gets not enough credit. Or all the characters in the film that ever get credit are the actors. But the soundtrack can really make or break a horror film, I think. It can also define a film. And it can make a film like... the film be more memorable by its music, and that happens quite more frequently than you think. But it also can ruin a film if the soundtrack doesn't fit what's being told. It can sort of really break the film as well. Like sometimes you'll get a soundtrack that's way too loud and sort of doesn't suit the environment of the film. It needs to really fit in with the environment of the film and sort of like give you a constant over sort of drone or background noise to the film that gives you it to remember the film and make it the atmosphere of the film a lot more scary. So I picked my top 5 today. It was quite difficult because I love a load of soundtracks. Some of them didn't make it. I've got 2 honourable mentions. But before we go on to them, I'll talk about ones that didn't make it. Now, one to me that disappoints me is Aliens, the second Alien film. I just find it, because again, it's very sort of like sort of Predator sort of type film, and sort of the soundtrack didn't do anything for me, but didn't draw me into the film, didn't make me appreciate the film or anything. So that's one soundtrack that a little bit disappointed me. There's other amazing soundtracks that sadly didn't make the cut, and that's Nightmare on Elm Street, Prometheus. I love Prometheus soundtrack, but I just could not fit them all in my favourite soundtracks. So I'm going to give you 2 honourable mentions. First of all, now Hammer films soundtracks are very grand and big, especially with the early ones like Frankenstein and Dracula, in fact most Dracula films all have the same sort of throughout the films. They'll have a sound that's in all of the Dracula films, the kind of dun 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 dun, and that sort of occurs in most of the Dracula films, and it's sort of like its signature tune. So I think that's iconic. So I'm going to give the Hammer horror films a shout out as being an honourable mention. I couldn't put it in there because to me it a little bit takes it away from the film sometimes, because it's so dramatic and it's so big, and occasionally you'll get one that's really really cool, and fits into the film really well, like the Gorgon. The soundtrack to that is fantastic, and it really fits into the film well. But a lot of them, the music was so grand, and it's and I just thought, yeah. And with Hammer, a lot of their soundtracks are quite similar, so it's it kind of like difficult to pick one. So I just gave that an honourable mention. This is a collection of different sort of Hammer films soundtracks from all different films. So I'm not sure if you could pick this up anymore, but it's a great little CD. Second honourable mention is one you're all going to be shocked about because you think it would be in everyone's top 5, but it just skipped out of mine, and it's John Carpenter's Halloween. It's fantastic, it's iconic, and it defines the movie. A bit like John Carpenter's The Thing and The Fog. Anything John Carpenter does really defines his movie. But I didn't pick it for 2 reasons. One, it would be obvious, to put it in there, and two, because it's a very repetitive soundtrack with the sort of piano based background, and um, its atmosphere was very low beam, and it and it just seemed to me they took the main theme and just sped it up or slowed it down, sort of thing, and which is really clever and really cool, and it really defined, and it was one of the best characters in the film. But for me, it just wasn't um, one of the best soundtracks. It's a fantastic soundtrack, and you know it's iconic, and it will always be on my CD player. I play this frequently. I'm not sure if this is still in print either, guys. I'm not sure, but it's great. It's fantastic, iconic soundtrack. But I don't like to be a bit too obvious and just, well, actually, most of this is really obvious. But I just thought no, because when I did my top five in my head, I thought, oh, this is this one, that one, and when I did the five, I thought, oh, I've missed out Halloween. But then I thought, I've done my five now. I can't put it in. Although it's iconic and it defines the movie, it just pips out for me because it's very similar to all of his soundtracks. All of John Carpenter's soundtracks have a sort of that feel to it. Um, and I just thought, no, I'm going to leave it out because I've already chose my five. So that's the only reason why it's not in the top five. Not because it's awful or it's not iconic. It's just because I'd already chose the five before I remembered Halloween. And I thought if I'd have remembered it, it would have been in my top five. But because I didn't, it's not one of my top five then, is it? So there we go. So let's begin. My top five favourite horror movie soundtracks. At number five is from a Clive Barker film, and it's Hellraiser. Absolutely love this soundtrack. I love the sort of sort of industrial sound to some of the tracks on there. A very, very iconic film, a British horror film. Absolutely fantastic. Had this CD quite a long time now. It's a great soundtrack, really memorable, and it brings so much to the film, especially when we get the ominous sort of tracks of the Cenobites, and it's just sort of like it's got almost like that sort of dark sort of overtones to it, and it's really, really creepy. And I just thought, wow, that's such a cool soundtrack. And when you've got the main theme and you've got the strings playing, it's so eerie. I'm just thinking, oh, it's just so creepy, this music. When I saw it at the cinema, it was so loud, and I just thought, wow, I remembered the music just as much as the movie when I first saw that in the cinema. So number five, Hellraiser. Number four, a little bit of a shock to be quite low for me because it is my favourite film of all time, but it's Alien. I think, is it Jerry Goldsmith did the soundtrack to this? I'm not very good at remembering. Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith. Again, this CD is very, very old, as you can tell by the covers and stuff. They look a bit tatty now, even the colour of the disc. I've had this since CDs come out, really, because it's one of my favourite films. So I brought this because it was a really important part of the film. To me, it was a character that is unsung in the film. It builds the film's atmosphere. It builds the that it gives you that sense of emptiness, you know, because it's quite obvious music, but it's very, very like slow and sort of like melodic in the background, and it makes you feel, and especially the opening shots of at the film when we're in the spacecraft and everyone's still in hypersleep, and you've got this sort of music playing slightly in the background, and it's just so incredibly awesome. and obviously the end titles was a great soundtrack, because it was like a soothing sort of sound to it, to bring you sort of like, oh, thank goodness that's sort of over, that all that trauma is over. And it did play out like a character, like when they were in the alien sort of spaceship on the planet, and they discovered the sheer size of it, and you can hear this sort of like almost industrial kind of music playing, all based around different sort of sound effects, and it's just absolutely mind blowing and really cool. And for the time, it was like nothing else. It was just, wow, this is absolutely amazing, really cool. So number 4 is Alien, and it is my favourite film of all time. I'm not sure if it's going to be toppled. I mean, The Witch came very close to toppling it, but this is my favourite film of all time, and it's my 4th favourite soundtrack, Alien. Number 3 is an iconic soundtrack from the 70s, and I just couldn't leave this one out because it was so iconic. It was so memorable. In fact, the whole world knows it, and every time they see one of these animals, they use it. And it's John Williams's Jaws. What an amazing soundtrack, and just the way he's created, just from a simple sound, just 2 notes, and made it sound like an approaching shark. And it's just so cool, because especially when it plays out, like at the beginning, you got the woman swimming in the scene, you got this soft sort of like, again, melodic, chilled music, and all of a sudden it cuts to a different part of the sea, and then we got that sound coming up, and it just sort of like thinking, it just absolutely thought, oh, something's big gonna happen here, and it did. And again, the soundtrack is one of those ones that plays along with the film, and in the different parts of the film, it just suits it so well. When you got all the boatsmen going out on the hunt for the shark, the music that played is quite upbeat and and you're just thinking, wow, that's lifted it's lifted you feeling a little bit. Think, oh, it's not so dread, but then when the shark gets away, or when the shark goes into the bay, and they all think they've got the shark there, and the shark goes into the bay, there's again that sort of ominous music playing in the background of dread, and you're just thinking, oh my god. And that music creates dread, it creates the fear, it creates the relief, and it's sort of like, and that's what the soundtrack's got to do. It pulls you in, or it can drag you away from the film. Can you imagine this? If this soundtrack was like a Hammer soundtrack, it would pull you right out of the film. It wouldn't give you that atmosphere, but this one did on its incredible bounds, and it was amazing. So my 3rd favorite all-time horror movie soundtrack is Jaws. Second one is another iconic one, again by Jerry Goldsmith, from the 1975 film, I believe, and it's The Omen. This is once again another iconic soundtrack that fits the bill, if you like. It fits the movie. This is a film about the son of the devil. That is sort of anti-Christ and anti-church. So they've got a church choir to sing the soundtrack, almost making it sound like this is the devil's choir. The way it sort of plays out, and it's because it's sort of like, it's very, very cool. It sounds like an old classical song, but it just gives you that, the way it repeats itself, in the sense of like, it's almost like a chant, brings like that sort of demon devil worship feeling to the film. And it's almost like it's egging on the son of the devil, Damien, because the music suits his awful deeds that are being done, not personally by him, but by the devil, to make him arise. But it's to me, the soundtrack in this is the devil, You know, that's his role in the film, and it plays out like that. Because whenever there's a bad thing going to happen, it plays in the background. It builds up and builds up and builds up, and then when the horrible deed's done, it just stops, and it's just like, you know, it just sends chills down you. So to me, the soundtrack of this is the character of the devil. Um, but that's just my opinion, because you don't see him now. All you see is the son of the devil, um, Damien Thorne. But the soundtrack plays out like this is the devil doing his deeds, you know, on behalf of Damien to make sure he rises from childhood. And that's what I really like about it. And it really is a character in the film, and it's iconic. Um, you know, so it's everybody knows the music to this, and it's absolutely wonderful. And there's some dark, gloomy music in it as well, especially in the scene where we've got Gregory Peck, who's discovered his wife's been killed, laying on the bed talking to David Warner um, about what he's got to do and about his wife dying. There's like this poor undertone and sort of sadness of the music um, over that, which represents a little bit of the goodness being sad and sorrow about what's happening. Uh, but of course, that doesn't last very long because the devil goes back out again. So that to me is a real character film. I mean, soundtrack. So that's why it's so high. It's my second favourite soundtrack of all time. So my favourite soundtrack of all time is by Johann Söderqvist, which is he's a Swedish composer, and it's a bit of a different one that people probably expect to be number one. But it is my favourite film soundtrack, and it's Let the Right One In. I absolutely love this soundtrack. It brings all elements to the film. It is definitely an extra character. It's got a very melodic and very peaceful and beautiful sound to it throughout. When you've got the two main characters talking or communicating, it's very soft with a sort of piano background. It's quite similar sounding to an Icelandic band I love called Suka Ross. Some parts of the soundtrack, and it just fits so well and beautifully. And there's some amazing, when there's a scene when the lad's out with his dad on the sort of like playing in the sort of snow and it's a bit more lively, and you've got this sort of like acoustic guitar sort of showing you a love of the relationship the dad has with his dad, and it just really embodies that. And like I said, and it really shows the relationship build up of Ely and the lad, just sort of like on our first Oscar, when they sort of relationship sort of builds, and you can see that, and it's really really cool. And there's some really sort of like moments in the soundtrack where it hits you hard, and it's quite ferocious, but then it always comes back down to this gentle melodic sort of piano, which almost melts your heart and brings you into the film and makes you want Oscar and Ely um, to be fine and to survive, and for their relationship to sort of bond, because you really fall from the. This is what's so different about this film. It's a vampire film, but you take the side of the vampire and the young boy Oscar. You take the side of them because they're so sweet and nice, and they show human emotion, how human emotion should be, looking out for one another, protecting one another. Doesn't matter what you like or what lifestyle you like, they still appreciated one another. And that's what I loved about this film. It's not a love story as such. It's a human story of human kindness and human bonding from somebody who's lonely and somebody who's bullied, and they've sort of found each other, and they sort of like become this kind of relationship between them, and it sort of and it sort of builds upon that. And underneath that embodiment is the story of one of them being a vampire, and how that being a vampire doesn't distract from the lad. Is kindness and wanting to be in this person's life, and I think that's what the music helps bring together those two. So that's why that is my favorite horror film soundtrack, and it's beautiful. Highly recommend picking this up, guys, if you can. It's really cool. So Let the Right One In is my favorite horror soundtrack. So it's a bit different than probably being expected. You probably thought, oh, it's going to be Friday the 13th, or one of these sort of classic films that I absolutely love. I mean, I love Martin's soundtrack. I love the Thing soundtrack. That's a fantastic soundtrack. Escape from New York is another great soundtrack, another John Carpenter soundtrack. All amazing. Yes, The Exorcist, but Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells, isn't it? Something like that. It's memorable, but it doesn't stick in my head for being something that brings something to the movie. Some soundtracks are just there, and of course, I can't include soundtracks with other people's songs. Like Scream uses a compilation of like other artists' songs, like Nick Cave and things like that. Although they're great soundtracks, but that's a different sort of soundtrack to me. To me, that's it's going to sound really bad. It's a lazy way. it's sort of taking other people's songs and using them to sort of try and create an atmosphere. Where these are soundtracks that are created by an orchestra who have been employed to bring an extra dimension to the film, and that's why I really appreciate these more. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this short little video, and I'll see you all soon.